From the Hindu Kush to the Rockies, a journey from Kabul to Colorado in community-led transformation, a memoir of resilience, advocacy, and transformation by Humayun Milad. Episode 27, Chapter 3, Grassroots Wisdom. The story of Afghanistan is often told through the lens of geopolitics, conflict, and external interventions. But for those who engage directly with communities at the grassroots level, the reality is far more nuanced, demanding, and deeply personal. To truly understand the country, one must step into the villages, the local councils, and the spaces where daily life is negotiated, where resilience is not just an idea, but a lived experience. In my years of working at the intersection of governance, development, and cultural preservation, I have learned that grassroots work in Afghanistan is both profoundly rewarding and immensely challenging. It is not simply about implementing policies or executing development projects. It is about earning trust, navigating complex social dynamics, and adapting to the unspoken rules that govern relationships within communities. Afghanistan is a land of contradictions, where tradition coexists with modern aspirations, and where centuries-old governance structures remain the backbone of local decision-making. Community Development Councils, CDCs, and District Development Assemblies, DDAs, introduced as part of efforts to modernize governance, did not replace Afghanistan's traditional leadership models. They evolved alongside them, absorbing the wisdom of informal councils like Jirgas and Shuras, while ensuring that participatory democracy had a place in shaping development decisions. But grassroots work is not as simple as introducing frameworks. It requires understanding how power operates in local settings, how decisions are made through consensus, and how cultural legitimacy often outweighs formal authority. The success of any development initiative depends not just on the resources allocated, but on the ability to engage communities in a way that respects their historical governance traditions while fostering inclusion and modernization. Yet, the most profound reality of grassroots work in Afghanistan is that failure is an unavoidable part of the process. Development projects collapse when they fail to account for local realities. Governance models struggle when they ignore the intricate relationships that bind communities together. Progress stalls when it is imposed rather than cultivated from within. Afghanistan has experienced repeated cycles of externally driven nation-building efforts that have overlooked the importance of grassroots engagement, and as a result, many initiatives have faded before they could take root. Through this book, I aim to tell the story of Afghanistan not from the perspective of policy reports or diplomatic negotiations, but from the ground, from the villages where real change happens, from the councils where debates shape futures, and from the conversations where trust is built. The reality of grassroots work is not about imposing solutions. It is about listening, adapting, and crafting paths forward that align with Afghanistan's deeply ingrained traditions and aspirations. At its core, this book is about the people who make Afghanistan what it is: the farmers, the educators, the local leaders, and the advocates who have kept communities resilient despite political shifts and external pressures. Their work, their voices, and their realities must be central to any discussion of Afghanistan's future. The reality of grassroots work in subnational governance and development. Working at the grassroots level in Afghanistan has never been about executing top-down strategies or imposing distant policies. It has been about being present, listening, adapting, and learning from the intricate systems that govern everyday life in local communities. Subnational governance is not simply an administrative function. It is a dynamic, evolving process where the relationships between people, traditions, and governance frameworks shape how development unfolds. From my work navigating the complexities of subnational governance, I have learned that the most fundamental truth about grassroots engagement is this: it is not the structures themselves that dictate success, but the way communities interact with them. In Afghanistan, the institutional reforms introduced through Community Development Councils, CDCs, and District Development Assemblies, DDAs, were meant to provide a bridge between central governance and local priorities, yet their effectiveness has depended entirely on how communities perceive and utilize them. For many rural communities, governance has always been a local affair, long before formal frameworks were introduced. When policies emerge from the national level, they only become meaningful when adapted to local realities, whether through tribal councils, village elders, or community negotiations. The challenge of grassroots governance is not whether institutions exist, but whether they are trusted, understood, and embraced as legitimate mechanisms of change. Yet, trust has never been automatic. I have witnessed firsthand how communities scrutinize governance reforms with skepticism, questioning whether they serve their interests or merely exist to fulfill external expectations. True grassroots work requires navigating these uncertainties, not with persuasion, but with proof. When CDCs are structured as inclusive platforms where local voices genuinely shape development priorities, trust begins to build. When DDAs bring together diverse communities to coordinate development efforts across regional lines, doubts begin to fade. But when governance structures fail to reflect the realities of local needs, when they become bureaucratic rather than participatory, their relevance is called into question. Subnational governance has been a test of whether modern frameworks can be molded in ways that preserve cultural identity while fostering sustainable development. The balancing act is delicate. Afghanistan is a country where history remains deeply intertwined with the present, where villages operate on principles of reciprocity, honor, and consensus. Many development interventions have overlooked these foundational dynamics, introducing models that lack cultural fluency. The failures of externally driven reforms have often come from their inability to recognize that change must grow from within, not be transplanted from elsewhere. Development at the grassroots level is never just about building infrastructure, distributing resources, or launching social programs. It is about creating pathways for governance to work in harmony with the social fabric of Afghanistan. It requires redefining representation to ensure that all voices, not just the most powerful, shape decisions. It necessitates mechanisms for dispute resolution that draw from both traditional and modern frameworks. It calls for economic planning that prioritizes local entrepreneurship over dependency on foreign assistance. But perhaps the most profound reality of grassroots work and subnational governance is that progress is slow and setbacks are inevitable. There have been moments when governance structures, despite best intentions, failed to gain traction. There have been instances where policies were introduced but never implemented due to local resistance or external instability. And yet, within each failure lies a lesson, a clarification of what works, what does not, and what must change in the pursuit of meaningful governance transformation. We'll continue this story in the next episode, so stay tuned.